Before we begin, let us look at what we are expected to accomplish today. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to define and distinguish the four main measures of variability: range, interquartile range, variance, and standard deviation. You should also be able to compute these measures manually and with the help of appropriate technologies such as a calculator, Excel, Google Sheets, or Jamovi. Most importantly, you should be able to interpret the results. So today, don't focus only on getting a numerical answer. Our bigger goal is to understand what the number tells us about the data. Before learning about spread, let us briefly return to the previous lesson and recall how we describe the center of a data set. This activity reviews measures of central tendency. For each situation, decide whether the mean, median, or mode gives the most useful description of the center. First, a rice retailer recorded the kilograms of rice sold each day for 1 week. The values are relatively close together, so the mean is appropriate. Second, we have employee salaries, including one extremely high salary of 150,000 pesos. Because of the extreme value, the median is more appropriate. Third, 30 learners asked to choose their favorite school fair activity. Since this is categorical data, we use the mode. Fourth, we have number of pages read by 10 learners. The mean is appropriate. Fifth, learners are asked which mobile app they use most often for studying. Again, this is categorical data, so the mode is appropriate. And finally, we have travel times with one extremely large value, 120 minutes. The median is the better measure. But notice something? In all these examples, we were asking about the center of the data. Today, we're going to ask a different question. Knowing the center is important, but is it enough? Look carefully at these two sets. Set A is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Set B is 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Find the mean and median of each set. Which set is more consistent? Why are measures of central tendency not enough? Let's find the mean and median of each set. For set A, the mean is 8 and the median is 8. For set B, the mean is also 8 and the median is also 8. So they have the same center. But are they equally consistent? Look at the values. Set A is more clustered around 8. Set B is more spread out. Therefore, set B has a greater variability. So which set is more consistent? We need measures of variability to describe consistency. This gives us an important lesson. Two data sets can have the same mean and median, but still have very different distributions. So measures of central tendency alone are not enough. We also need measures that describes spread or variability of the data. And that leads us directly to today's topic. Think of describing data as telling a complete story. Central tendency describes a typical or central value. We use the mean, median, and mode. But variability describes how far the values is spread. Today we will use four measures: range, interquartile range, variance, and standard deviation. The center tells us what is typical. The spread tells us how consistent or dispersed the values are. And together, they help us make better decisions. So what exactly are measures of variability? Measures of variability are statistical values that describe how spread out or dispersed the data points are in a data set. The four measures we will study are range, interquartile range, variance, and standard deviation. Just like the measures of central tendency, we have these four for ungrouped data and for grouped data. But today's discussion will focus on ungrouped data. As we go through each measure, don't just memorize the formula. Ask yourself, what does this measure tell me about the data? And when would I use it? Let's start with the simplest measure of variability, the range. The range is the difference between the highest value and the lowest value in a data set. So the formula would be range is equal to the highest value minus the lowest value, where R is the range, HV is the highest value, and LV is the lowest value. The range gives us the full span of the data. A larger range indicates a wider distance between the endpoints. A smaller range indicates that the endpoints are close together. However, the range uses only two observations. It ignores every value between the minimum and maximum. So we must interpret it carefully. Let us apply this formula to the scores of two groups. Consider the top 5 scorers of two groups in the Matira Matibay Quiz B. Group Matinik has scores 35, 31, 28, 26, and 20. Group Mat Husay has scores 50, 36, 24, 20, and 10. Here's the question. Which group was more consistent? If I were to compute the average, both groups have a mean of 28. Therefore, neither group performed better if our only criterion is the average score. However, look at the distribution. Group Matinik's values extend from 20 to 35. Group Mahusay's values extend from 10 to 50. Which groups appears to be more consistent? Group Matinik appears more consistent because its scores are closer together. Let us verify this impression by computing the range. Let us recall the formula for range, highest value minus lowest value. So that would be 35 minus 20, and that is equal to 15. So this means the full data set spans 15 units. Now let's take a look at group Mahusay. Let's recall again the formula. The highest value is 50 and the lowest value is 10. 50 minus 10 is 40. This means the full data set spans 40 units. Once again, both groups have a mean of 28, but their ranges are very different. Group Batinik's scores span 15 points, while Group Mahusay scores span 40 points. Therefore, Group Matinik is more consistent according to the range. Group Mahusay has greater variability. Remember, however, that the range uses only the highest and the lowest values. What if we want to focus on the middle part of the data set? The interquartile range measures the spread of the middle 50% of the observations. The formula is Q3 minus Q1, where first quartile Q1 represents the 25th percentile and the third quartile, Q sub 3, represents the 75th percentile. Look at it this way. So the data set is divided into four parts. Each part is 25%. The middle 50% is what we call the interquartile range. At the middle is the median. This is Q sub 2. This one is Q sub 3, while this one is Q sub 1. The area from the minimum to Q sub 1 contains approximately 25% of the data. The area from Q sub 1 to the median is another 25%. The same is true for the sections above the median. Because the IQ are focused on the middle half, it is more resistant to extreme values than the range. There are different accepted procedures for locating quartiles. Let us begin with the classroom procedure commonly called the median of halves method. We have here 5 steps. Step 1, arrange the data values from smallest to largest. 2, determine the median. 3, determine the first quartile. 4, determine the third quartile. And last, solve for IQR by subtracting the first quartile from the third quartile. But bear in mind that when the number of observations is add, exclude the overall median before finding the medians of the lower and upper halves. And when the number of observations is even, divide the ordered data set into two halves directly. Remember this AMFTS. We're going to use that in this example. Solve for the IQR of 7, 19, 24, 14, 9, 16, 12, 15, and 25. First step, letter A, we're going to arrange our data. Second step, we have to find the median. Since there are 9 values here, the median is right at the middle, which is 15. Remember that we have to exclude it before finding the medians of the lower and the upper halves. Next, we have to determine the first quartile. Since there are 4 values here, the first quartile is right exactly at the middle of 9 and 12. Another 4 values at the right of the median, exactly at the middle of 19 and 24. So let us solve for our first quartile. That would be the sum of 9 and 12 divided by 2. 9 plus 12 divided by 2 is 10.5. Next step, let us solve for our third quartile. That would be the sum of 19 and 24 divided by 2. 19 plus 24 divided by 2 is 21.5. And finally, we have to subtract first quartile from the third quartile to determine our interquartile range. So 21.5 minus 10.5 is 11. This means that the middle 50% spans 11 units under this quartile convention. Now let us see what happens when the data set contains an even number of values. I just added 30 here so that we'll have 10 values, even number of observations. So first step, we have to arrange our data. Second step, we have to determine the median. There are 10 values, so divide them into two halves of 5 values each. Third step, we have to determine our first quartile. Since we have 5 values here, it is exactly at the middle, the third value, which is 12. And in here, the middle value is 24. So first quartile is 12 and third quartile is 24. And finally, we have to subtract quartile 1 from quartile 3. 24 minus 12 is equal to 12. This means the middle 50% spans 12 units for this convention. Spreadsheet software often uses another quartile convention. Let us examine the inclusive percentile method. The inclusive percentile method locates a percentile using the position formula 1 plus quantity n minus 1 times p. Let's recall our first example earlier. So let's solve for the first quartile using this formula. Our n is the number of values. That would be 9. So 9 minus 1 is equal to 8. 8 times 0.25 is equal to 2 plus 1. That would be 3. So first quartile position is the third value. 1, 2, 3. Q sub 1 is equal to 12. Now let us solve for the third quartile. Again, using this formula, our n is still 9 and 9 minus 1 is equal to 8. 8 times 0.75 is 6 plus 1 is 7. So this means that the third quartile is the seventh value. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Third quartile is equal to 19. To solve for the IQR, let us subtract 12 from 19. 19 minus 12 is equal to 7. This means the middle 50% spans 7 units in this convention. Notice that this differs from the median of Hobbes' answer. The difference is caused by the quartile convention, not by careless arithmetic. When the percentile position is not a whole number, we interpolate between adjacent observations. Let's see how the inclusive method works when there are 10 observations. Let us solve for the IQR. We're still going to use the formula 1 plus quantity n minus 1 times p. So for the first quartile position, our n is 10 this time, so 10 minus 1 is 9. 9 times 0.25 is 2.25 plus 1 is 3.25. 3.25 lies between the third value, 1, 2, 3, 12, and the fourth value, 14. We move 25% of the distance from 12 to 14. Here is 0.25. 14 minus 12 is 2. 2 times 0.25 is zero point 0.5 plus 12 is 12.5. This is our first quartile. Now, for the third quartile position, again, our n is equal to 10, so 10 minus 1 is 9. 9 times 0.75 is 6.75 plus 1 is 7.75. Position 7.75 lies between the seventh value, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 19, and the eighth value, 24. We move 75% of the distance from 19 to 24. 24 minus 19 is 5. 5 times 0.75 is 3.75. Plus 19 is 22.75. Here is our third quartile. To solve for the IQR, that would be Q3 minus Q1. 22.75 minus 12.5 is equal to 10.25. This means the middle 50% of the data set spans 10.25 units. So once again, we get a different result because we are using a different quartile method. This is why it is important to know which quartile method is being used, especially when using technology. We're not done yet. We still have the third method, exclusive percentile method. The difference of exclusive percentile to inclusive percentile is that this one uses the position quantity n plus 1 times p. Let us recall our first example, and this time we're going to solve this using exclusive percentile method. So we're going to use this formula to determine the position of the first quartile. Our n is 9, so 9 plus 1 is 10. And 10 times 0.25 is 2.5. The position 2.5 lies between the second value, 9, and the third value, 12. We move 50% of the distance from 9 to 12. 12 minus 9 is 3. 3 times zero point 0.5 is 1.5. Plus 9 is 10.5. This is our first quartile. Now let us solve for the third quartile position. Again, our n is 9. 9 plus 1 is 10. 10 times 0.75 is 7.5. Position 7.5 lies between the seventh value, 19, and the eighth value, 24. We move 50% of the distance from 19 to 24. 24 minus 19 is 5, and 5 times zero point 0.5 is 2.5. Plus 19, 21.5. This is our third quartile. To solve for the interquartile range, Q3 minus Q1. 21.5 minus 10.5 is equal to 11. This means the middle 50% spans 11 units using this convention. Now let us see how the exclusive method works when we have 10 observations. Let's recall our example. We just added 30. Now our position would be quantity n plus 1 times p. So for the first quartile position, our n is 10. 10 plus 1 is 11. 11 times 0.25 is 2.75. Position 2.75 is between the second value, 9, and the third value, 12. We move 75% of the distance from 9 to 12. 12 minus 9 is 3, and 3 times 0.75 is 2.25, plus 9 is 11.25. This is our first quartile. Now let us solve for the third quartile position. Again, our n is 10. 10 plus 1 is 11. 11 times 0.75 is 8.25. Position 8.25 is between the 8th value, 24, and the ninth value, 25. We move 25% of the distance from 24 to 25. 25 minus 24 is 1. 1 times 0.25 is 0.25. Plus 24 is 24.25. This is our third quartile. To solve for IQR, Q3 minus Q1, 24.25 minus 11.25. And this is equal to 13. This means the middle 50% spans 13 units using this method. So once again, we get a different result because we are using a different quartile method. This is why it is important to know which quartile method is being used, especially when using technology. For your reference, I have summarized the three quartile calculations method: the median of halves, the inclusive percentile, and the exclusive percentile. Now that we know how to measure the middle 50%, let's move to a measure based on the distance from the mean, the variance. Variance measures spread by using the squared deviation of the observations from the mean. We have two formulas. We have the sample variance and the population variance, where S squared is the sample variance while sigma squared is the population variance. X is the individual value, X bar is the sample mean, mu is the population mean, N is the sample size, and capital N is the population size. For this lesson, we're just going to discuss the sample variance. You might ask, why do we square the deviations? First, positive and negative deviation would otherwise cancel. Second, squaring gives greater weight to observations farther from the mean. A high variance means that the data points are more spread out from the mean and from each other. Variance is useful mathematically, but it is expressed in squared units. If the original data are measured in points, the variance is measured in square points. Let's calculate the variance using the Matinic score we have already used for the range. Let's recall the formula for sample variance. So first we have to determine our mean. I'll create a table for this. The mean is 28. How did I arrive with that? I added the 5 scores and divided by 5. Now we calculate each deviation from the mean. That would be x minus x bar. 35 minus 28 is 7. And then we are going to square this for d squared. And 7 squared is 49. Next one, 31 minus 28 is 3. And 3 squared is equal to 9. 28 minus 28 is 0. And 0 squared is still 0. 26 minus 28 is negative 2. And negative 2 squared is positive 4. 20 minus 28 is negative 8, and negative 8 squared is positive 64. Here is something interesting. When we add all the deviations, the answer must be 0. Let's try that. Negative 2, negative 8 is negative 10. 7 plus 3 is 10. So 10 minus 10 is indeed equal to 0. So the sum of the deviation of the values from the mean is always 0. That is the reason why we square them. Now let us get the sum of our squared deviations. 49 plus 9 plus 0 plus 4 plus 64 is 126. Let us substitute 126, the sum of our square deviation, in the numerator. Our n is 5, 5 minus 1 for the denominator. And 5 minus 1 is 4. 126 divided by 4 is 31.5. Therefore, the sample variance is 31.5. Variance give us the average squared spread, but the squared units aren't always easy to interpret. So let's take the square root. Standard deviation is the positive square root of the variance. For a sample, we use the square root of the sample variance. For a population, we use the square root of the population variance. We have the same notations for the variables here. Standard deviation measures, on average, how far each value in a dataset is from the mean. Standard deviation is commonly used because it expresses spread in the same unit as the original observations. If the data are test scores, the standard deviation is also measured in score points. A small standard deviation means that values tend to be close to the mean. A large standard deviation means that values are more widely dispersed. We already calculated a sample variance of 31.5 earlier, so finding the standard deviation now requires only one additional step. Again, standard deviation is just the square root of the variance. Since we have already computed our variance earlier, which is 31.5, we only have to do one more step, and that is to extract the square root on both sides. So the index 2 here and this exponent will cancel out, and the square root of 31.5 is 5.61. This means the scores differ from the mean of 28 by approximately 5.61 points as measured by the sample standard deviation. We can calculate one standard deviation below and above the mean by adding and subtracting 5.61 to 28. 28 minus 5.61 is 22.39. And 28 plus 5.61 is 33.61. So standard deviation helps us understand the typical spread of the scores around the mean. We now know how to compute these measures manually. Let us see how technology can improve efficiency and reduce arithmetic errors. Let's start with using Excel or Google Sheets.